How's it going? So I'm Carlo Flores. I work at Edgecast Networks. As Jordan mentioned, I help run LA DevOps and JavaScript Los Angeles. These are two of your best damn meetup groups in LA. If you guys don't already go to meetup groups, I mean, it's fantastic. This past year, we've gotten a chef meetup that was started. There's a LA Makers group, which is to help kids program and build cool projects. There's one of the great meetups that Jordan hosts. SoCal Python's been around forever, looking great. LA Ruby looks great. Like, come on out to meetups. They're awesome. You always learn something. If these slides are hard to find or hard to see, you can browse on your phone at scale11x.biggiantnerds.com. I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of links today, so all this stuff, anything blue is a link. And what I want to talk about today is how I think DevOps should be part of your job title. But before we do that, we should talk about why DevOps shouldn't be part of your job title. So I did a search on Google, and as we all know, there's been a lot said about what is and isn't DevOps, and it's hard to see, but there's 1.5 million hits for how DevOps shouldn't be part of your job title. And instead of trying to summarize all those things, I'd like to talk about the things that kind of hit me really deep. So Jez Humble asked, why would you try to solve a silo problem by creating a new silo? And that gets really applicable when you talk to guys who've actually done it. So John Vincent did this. He becomes part of a DevOps team. And he says all that happened was he got bitching from the operations team that DevOps broke something. And that he got bitching from the development team that DevOps broke something. And it hits like really close to home when you think about Damon Edwards' like classic thing with the wall of confusion. And now instead of dev hitting ops and ops hitting dev, we've replaced this with a DevOps team, and now they're getting it from two sides. And I think that's really stupid. Brandon Burden asked, did you ever get so mad that you made a DevOps team? And like, yeah, not much to say there. I don't know how to say this guy's name, but if you use Puppet, you know who he is. And he made a list of what DevOps isn't, which I thought was really clever. And I think it's important to say this, like, DevOps isn't PR for what we've always done. It's not 2003 anymore. A lot's happened in the past 10 years, a lot's happened in the past 5 years, or the past 1 year. Like, you can't do it the same way. You have to keep learning. He says it's not a set of tools. Like, if you chef, you do not DevOps. If you use Puppet, you're not a DevOps. Just like if you use Graphite, you're not a monitoring genius, right? And yeah, I mean, these things I think are really true, and we have to acknowledge that DevOps is a culture. But one of the things Brandon Burden does is he has a great thing called HangOps, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of guys who meet once a week, and they talk about some topic in a Google Hangout. A couple of weeks ago, they have a guy named Kelsey Hightower who works at Puppet Labs. And Kelsey talks about how his previous shop went through some PCI or PCI-like compliance. And if you guys aren't familiar, there's a real wall there. Like, devs cannot touch production systems. QA cannot touch dev systems. Ops can touch all systems, but there's a real wall. And he's working with a developer. He's on the ops team at the time. And they just keep going back and forth, and they're not actually getting any work done. So Kelsey picks up his laptop. He goes upstairs. He sits beside his developer, and he says, let's get this done. And they just bang it out. And I don't know what DevOps is in particular, but that's DevOps. And I think one of the problems that we have is we feel like people, or I can only speak for myself, but I feel like we're kind of co-opting this word and using it to make money or get attention, and it feels dirty, like frankly it does. But all that said, there's something to acknowledge, which is that culture matters. When a company is smart enough to say that DevOps is what they're looking for, like, why are we dissing those folks? Because it cuts both ways. It's not just about us. It's about the other side. So Spike Morelli, I think, does this really well. And he just says, you know, a job title's just a job title. Don't take it so seriously. And it's just yet another tool. So use it where applicable. But again, we can't really get into this conversation without talking about, like, this recruiter hate that somehow lives with all technology-related people. And I don't understand this concept of, like, is it really that bad? That said, there's also, like, one of the best things about getting a ton of pings from recruiters, and you will get a ton of pings from recruiters if you put this on your LinkedIn or whatever, is if you're in a shop where you're complaining because you can't implement change, or if you're in a shop where you have no power or you're doing it all wrong, maybe you should look for a shop that's looking for a DevOps guy. I don't understand. The flip side of not understanding wanting people to offer you money is I don't understand how you sit at a shop when everybody in this room is in high demand. You're all worth a ton of money, and you can drive where you can go. The last thing I really like about recruiters is every now and again, I see an opportunity that I find tempting. And what's valuable to me is it makes me think about what I want. So all that is about how it happened to me. And I kind of just want to open up about that. So a recruiter hits me up last year. And what made it for me was it was the opportunity to build a team at a shop. This is Edgecast. With massive scale, we push something like 4% of the internet, maybe 5% now. We have 30 some odd data centers, thousands upon thousands of servers. And it's an opportunity to, I was just excited. I was really excited. So I go through the technical screen. And then we go to this point of having interviews. And one of the things that surprised me was, I knew right away I wanted to work there. So in my first interview, I'm sitting there with a VP of Managed Services, a VP of Ops, and my chief architect, who's now my boss. And we're going through, and they're asking me what I think of Puppet, what I think of Chef, Nginx, Apache, whatever. And funny things come up, and the whole group laughs as a group. Then my second interview is with my CEO and our lead operations engineer. And there's a moment of, have you guys ever seen that? Have you ever gone to an interview with a CEO and an ops guy who can laugh together? And I was impressed. All that said, I paid attention to what Brandon said. When John Vincent does something, I pay attention. When they said that all these things would happen, I was looking forward to it. I was actually genuinely excited by the idea of an ops guy coming up to me and going, who the fuck are you? What the fuck are you doing here? Who the fuck's this team? And devs going you guys are going to take my releases? Fuck you guys. What do you guys know you're doing? So it was awesome. We did it right. We've shipped code. Yeah, well, or I don't know. Ops are bitchy, right? I'm bitchy too. So what was funny was while it was a wonderful opportunity and I found myself really excited and I love going to work every day, there was a moment there where I felt bad. Oh, yeah. But I felt like I did it. My title is Development Operations, or that's my team. I don't even know what that means. I felt like I really was co-opting the culture. I was taking this thing, and what is that? What's my job? Or when guys would ask me, what the fuck do you do? And I describe it. None of it ever sounded like development operations. These words didn't really come up. So I tried to change my job title. Now, mind you, Edgecast has a whole HR team. It's the biggest company I've ever worked for. And I've changed job titles at every job I've ever had for fun because I find it enjoyable. But I just didn't like it anymore, so I thought about coming up with a new one, which was Release Management Development Operations, because somehow that made more sense to me. And then I wondered what I was doing with my life. Why am I doing this? Lars has a saying where he says, meetups are like our union. We make sure nobody's getting screwed. We're really open at LA DevOps. We have conversations. People find out how much money other people make. We're open. We talk about pain, whatever. So I think of it more as therapy than as a union. But right around the same time, I got exposed to this idea called hate-driven development. And I loved it. I loved it immediately, much like I loved the idea of DevOps. And I'm not sure if Jordan Sissel is the guy who came up with it, but he was at one of those meetups, and yeah, Jordan's the guy who I associate with hate-driven development. And I don't even really know what it means or what's involved, much like DevOps. But all I know is humans fail and robots do not. And if something goes wrong, I think it's really stupid to call out who did this instead of going, why isn't there a test for this? Or I also don't believe, or all you guys have worked with this guy. The guy who complains about everybody else not shipping their shit is the guy who doesn't ship his shit. It's not about people, it's about programs and systems, and that's DevOps. So I want to talk about a specific example because I realize that's really abstract. So around our 3-month mark, our team takes over updates to the edge, again, thousands of servers. And we're building software and we're pushing it and we're testing it, canary process, we built a testing environment, whatever. These are things that we launched really quickly. But we take over response call. And my first week, I get called by the NOC 4 times. You haven't pushed anything. Like, this stuff's just failing. And they're calling me 4 times in the middle of the night to go, the guy who used to do this would do this. Like, he'd get the call from the NOC in the middle of the night and fix it and go back to sleep. Like, how can anybody function like this? But, so we fix it. So we iterate over it. We have our team, like, we are angry. Like, I find myself really angry. I feel myself angry just thinking about this now. And it's just like, what the fuck? Why isn't my robot fixing it? Like, oh, there's an edge case? Too bad. Build a test for the edge case and let's fix it. And what was interesting was all of a sudden, it went from, like, in the span of a month, from DevOps broke it to, oh my God, it's broken. Is this a DevOps thing? Like, we get called maybe once a month, and it's never us. It's something else that broke, and they're just like, please help. Like, please, if it's not something you do, can you just help? Like, nobody's here to help us. To where we are now, which is how we're supposed to do it. We ask, how do we make this right before we deploy? And I think that's really, while it's been a lot of pain to get to that process, that's really the end result that we're all hoping for. When you remove the hate, oh, Jesus, what happened? Technical difficulties, let's see what happens. The hate, like, why is it switch here? But when you remove the hate from people and instead focus it onto robots, all you're left with is love. And it's very nice. But really, there's another aspect of, like, what does your job title really mean? Like, what is it that we're so protective of? And I want to give you an example where everybody in this room is a professional. We all know what these things mean, but, like, step back and remember the first time you saw them, or think about if you weren't a technical person, what do these things mean? Like, quality engineer is one of my favorites, where I thought about trying to change my title to not bad engineer or pretty awesome engineer. Like, data scientist, I think all scientists deal with data. And then there's guys who, like, just have amazing job titles. So John Bender, one of the founders of JavaScript Los Angeles, is senior computer scientist at Adobe. My, right? Like, that's quite a title. An old coworker, Daniel Hengeveld, is softwaresman at GitHub. That's one I really want. And he built internal tools for his teams, which sounds a lot like DevOps to me. And Scott Smith at Discus is lead operations engineer. Like, look at this hotness. Look at it. So is it really that bad? Like, development operations engineer, is it really this terrible thing? Especially when you consider, isn't the most DevOps of all concepts to not give a fuck about your title? And it doesn't matter if you're ops, it doesn't matter if you're dev, you either ship or you don't. So I don't think that you doing it, like, I just think if you make your title whatever you want to be, you could be awesome engineer. If you do it, it's not necessarily stepping on the culture, especially if you agree that that line between dev and ops is really stupid. And I'm not just talking about, like, the wall of confusion. I'm not just talking about who deploys, but, like, I don't know, our devs and our ops don't sit together. Like, do your guys's? Or our devs and our ops probably don't make the same money. Why? Like, if we look at this picture of, like, whose responsibility it is and, like, how we always think of, like, dev as half and ops as half, if we looked at folks' salary, would it be 50-50? If we looked at, like, how much time they get to, exposure they get to senior management or spend time in planning meetings, is it 50-50? And I think that space is where it gets really interesting, again, regardless of what your job title is. But maybe the most important thing is DevOps 1. Like, if you're not adopting this in your culture, like, you're doing it wrong. And everybody knows what it's like to push broken, stupid code. And everybody knows what they should do to make it right. And it's not even an argument anymore, like, DevOps 1. So let's talk about where we can move forward as opposed to, like, dissing this concept as if, like, I don't know, that's not a good analogy, but like I don't understand where the hate is for these things. But if I haven't pitched you, or if you still don't want DevOps as your job title, I think hate-driven developer looks pretty good. So last set of links. I work at EdgeCast. You should come out to LA DevOps or JavaScript Los Angeles. If you want to be my friend, I'm Lolcat Stevens on Twitter, or Flores on GitHub, and that's my email address. Thank you.
So let's do a little Q&A, and then Alex Perry will be coming up in a minute. Does anybody got any questions for Carlo? Or other interesting job titles to suggest, perhaps? Any comments? Yeah? Oh, here's one.
My job title is DevOps engineer. It's good. It's good.
Maybe the thing to do then is to enhance it, taking a hint from Carlo's talk, maybe we should be DevOps love engineer. Thought about that?
So I think fundamentally the problem I've always had with the title being DevOps team or DevOps engineer or any of that stuff is that there's that focus on that additional silo. And at the end of the day, if your culture internally is so broken that you're basically adding another team because there's brokenness, how do you communicate to senior management that, no, really, just calling us DevOps isn't going to fix the problem that ops and dev don't talk together? And how do you communicate to them that when you go to other companies where, yeah, my company doesn't have DevOps engineers, or at least not in the part of the company that I work, and I'll tell you what, we're as DevOps as they come. I walk over to devs and say, hey, how do we fix this? Because it's broken. And they come over to me and say, hey, this is broken. How do we fix this? And we sit down side by side and fix it, because fixing shit is good. And that's, I think, where my biggest concern is. How do you convince senior management that if you've already got silos, that the whole purpose is to break down silos?
So when I went through my interview process at EdgeCast, my very first question was, so what broke? And they laughed, and they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, seriously, like, what broke? Why am I here? And I think the way you solve it is just honesty. So I'm opening up, but EdgeCast really does have those walls, but at least from what I've seen. I don't know how it was before, but there really was like two silos. Or I even see silos within the development team. Again, I think all of this is really stupid. So I had the opportunity to just say, I think this is really stupid, and here's what I think. And I think that's what's so valuable about the interview process. Like, they knew exactly what they were going to get when we talked, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I think that sense of communication isn't just between different silos or different teams. It's between you and your boss. Like, so, but I can imagine how there are situations where your boss is like, no. Again, my thought process is go to another shop, because that's really stupid.
There's a stage which you didn't call out that a friend of mine once told me about, which is the one about 2/3 of the way through when they come around and go, it's broken, I hope it was you. Because you've got robots and you can fix it faster.
Right.
As a DevOps engineer, my responsibility is to champion DevOps, the culture. That might involve sitting with the architect and writing Grails routes inside of the application, or sitting with a systems engineer discussing if we're going to use a reverse proxy and what we're going to do as far as configuration for our domain. So that championing that communication between people is what I do as an engineer. So engineering that is my job.
And I'd like to expand on that point where one of the things I'd really love for our team to reach is building frameworks where everybody's building tests and contributing code. Like, I came up through support, then ops, then into a development team. Like, I'm not a computer scientist. I just build code that works. And I want everybody to do that. Like, I don't care if you're a knock engineer. You can write a bash script that exits non-zero if it fails. So I love the idea. I don't think it's just the communication, but yeah, let's build robots so all of us are doing these things, and it's really exciting to me.
Maybe you could condense that role down as a love evangelist.
Yeah, I like
You're
it.
there to evangelize love-driven development.
Thank you.
Alex, you want to get set up? Yeah, hey, thanks for the question. Thank you, Carlo.